Hi, we're here with Talia Landry, and we would like to find out some things about you, Talia.
So yes, I am Talia Landry. I am from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribal nation. I live and have been born in Mashpee, and I am a culture keeper. I work with our youth within cultural revitalization. So I'm an artist, make a lot of jewelry, regalias, but a lot of my work within the community is communications work and community organizing, I should say. So getting our community together to do big projects and do a lot of our traditional skills again within our culture keeping. And I am a youth advisor within the Mashpee Native Environmental Ambassadors, which is a new youth group that we incorporated in 2023. I also am a grants manager within the education department, so a lot of my work is youth and culture driven, and within communications, as I'm a videographer and do a lot of like that community organizing, as I said before. And yeah, so that's where I am.
Thank you so much. You do a lot.
Could you speak to the importance of herring to the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe?
Yes, so herring are very important to the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe because they signify new life. They are the symbol for the new year, because when the herring come is the time when we start to plant our gardens, and when the bigger fish will come soon after. So when their time is coming up the river from the salt waters to spawn in the freshwater ponds is our time that we know we can catch them for their bait, we can use them for fertilizer, and we can start growing our plants. There's obviously the first scout of herring that comes, so that's kind of like our trigger, like, oh yeah, let's start getting ready. We don't get those herring. We let them kind of scout as they're named to do, and then within that we start prepping our soils and what we've harvested from the season before to be able to plant, and so on and so forth. So then when those big herring come, it's time to catch those herring, to go fishing for striper, and then eventually the bluefish, and so on and so forth. And then, like I said, use those herring again for our fertilizer and also to eat. So that's our time to start smoking our herring, to start pickling our herring for the future seasons. And it just really signifies that new year. And so we honor them in that way. We have songs devoted to our herring. We have celebrations that honor our herring for the Thanksgiving of harvesting those herring. So they're very important to us. And without the herring coming up the river, it would signify a great loss within our cultural value system, where we wouldn't know what would come next.
Thank you.
Could you speak to us about the Mashpee Wampanoag Native Environmental Ambassadors?
The Mashpee Wampanoag Native Environmental Ambassadors is a youth group devoted to enact rights of nature legislation through the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. So that's just a complicated way of saying a group of Wampanoag youth gathered together to create laws, that is rights of nature laws, to protect our natural relatives. And we do that through creating Mashpee Wampanoag tribal laws, because the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe is a sovereign nation. So rights of nature is a large movement and concept that's naturally it's an indigenous value that natural beings have the same rights as human beings. So how human rights are identified in the Western law legal system, this is also doing that for natural beings. So it's not declaring, it's just stating the fact that they do have rights as well. And within their rights, they have the right to procreate, propagate, and live freely in a healthy environment. So as I said, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe is a sovereign nation that has its own laws. We are enacting rights of nature laws to protect our natural relatives through the Mashpee Wampanoag tribal nation. And it's all led by youth ages 15 to 22 that do a lot of community organizing and education. They speak a lot about what rights of nature is, and with our first initiative of the rights of herring, to protect herring in order for them to have the same rights as human beings.
Thank you.
So could you tell us how the Mashpee Wampanoag Native Environmental Ambassadors was created?
Yes, so Mashpee N.E.A. was created last year. So in 2023, a youth group traveled to Washington, D.C., where it was an Indian policy workshop, and they had to talk about one of the challenges that their community is facing. So they decided to do their project on the rivers and the ponds in Santuit Pond, and the algae blooms and things like that, and how the environment is suffering. So we were presented with a fellowship through the Pioneers revolving around rights of nature. So we obviously thought of this youth that traveled to decide that this was their problem and challenge and start with them. And they all hopped on to take on this fellowship to learn about rights of nature and to focus on herring. And within that, we traveled to Alaska, where we sat down and wrote the rights of herring state of emergency resolution that was unanimously passed by tribal council. And they took the initiative to start the group, the Mashpee N.E.A, because at first it was just a fellowship working on a problem, and they accomplished it. And then they decided to do this work was everlasting and something that the youth needed to invest in, because they are the future leaders and they will be enacting these laws and putting these laws into practice. So they decided to create this group, and as the youth advisor, I supported them, and we went on this journey of educating the community and our community on rights of nature and developing the actual laws to protect those natural beings.
Thank you.
Could you explain to us what the Declaration of the Rights of Herring means?
Yes, so the Declaration of the Rights of Herring was the first initiative and accomplishment of the Mashpee Wampanoag N.E.A. And basically, it's the Declaration of Rights of Herring, declaring a state of emergency. So it's a tribal resolution, and what the tribal resolution does, it states the problem and how we're going to resolve it. So within the state of emergency of the rights of herring, it stated that our herring are in a crisis, that this is why that the herring are in a crisis, listing all the challenges as far as the construction of the fish ladders, the algae blooms, the overpollution, the overdevelopment, and so on and so forth. So it just stated what they're challenged with, and then how we as the Mashpee Wampanoag tribal nation are the natural stewards of this land. The Creator gave us the ability of having a voice, so we are obligating ourselves and have the responsibility to use our voice to fight and advocate for these herring and the natural relatives around us as the natural stewards of this land for thousands of years. And then within that, it also listed off actual obligations, basically, or responsibilities of the tribal council. So saying, with this problem that we have, this is how we're going to resolve it. The tribal council is going to commit to resources within developing this law that will protect the herring. The tribal council will invest resources into doing whatever we need to do to reconstruct the fish ladders within our ancestral homelands, with focusing on the ones in Mashpee, Wareham, and the ones that are most in crisis, and dignifying the Natural Resource Commission to give us standards and guidance within how we're going to address these challenges that the herring are having. So it really obligates the tribal council as a political government to solve the herring problem and really put their attention within creating these laws to protect our natural relatives and making sure that we have the resources to do so.
Thank you.
Could you tell us about the N.E.A.'s accomplishments?
Yes, so Mashpee N.E.A. has had a lot of accomplishments over this short period of time, over a year. So their first, not only going to Alaska for this, enriching cultural exchange and creating the state of emergency, the rights of herring resolution, getting that passed unanimously by tribal council. They also traveled to different conferences within California and New York Climate Change Week in order to present about the rights of herring and teach other tribal communities about rights of nature and how they can, and helping them enact, rights of nature within their tribal communities so we can spread it across Turtle Island. And then they also drafted the Rights of Herring Ordinance. So that was the biggest accomplishment that we have done so far as creating the actual law. And that's already within the hands of the Natural Resource Commission and Tribal Council. So when it gets to that point of being put on the agenda of Tribal Council, the N.E.A. is very prepared and ready to present it for it to go through that lengthy process of getting a law enacted through the tribal nation. So that was a big accomplishment within itself. And then, kind of continuing on their travels as far as, like I said, the New York Climate Change Week, where they led the March Against Fossil Fuels as Indigenous leaders with other Indigenous leaders. They were able to present on national forefronts about rights of herring in the Mashpee Wampanoag tribal community and Mashpee N.E.A. They also presented again at a different conference in California in March, and then this weekend we're going to North Carolina to witness a tribunal, rights of nature tribunal, which we hope to bring to the Mashpee community, which is basically a mock trial of rights of nature mock trial of how it would be presented within a federal court system.
Thank you.
So could you speak to us about your goals for the group?
Yes, so some of the immediate goals would be reconstructing those fish ladders, which is already within the process. The Mashpee Natural Resource Department, or the tribal's Natural Resource Department, is working with Mashpees to develop, the plans to reconstruct those runs with the state. So there's already funding going towards that. So that's a big goal of the Mashpee N.E.A. Another goal, obviously, would to get this law passed. But then the larger goal within the youth group, I think, is to get the message really passed along the tribal communities and really within the Indigenous youth, because they thrive together, they're the future leaders, and this is a concept that is combating the climate crisis. And as Indigenous people, it is within our creation stories that within the 7th generation that it is the time that non-natives are ready to listen, and the time that we are able to speak, because we do have a humbleness about us and have been sitting back for so long and keeping our tradition and our cultures within ourselves. So at this point within our stories, it's about that time that we start speaking out more. We start, kind of combating what we say within this climate crisis, and using our voice and using the youth to lead that voice with the guidance from our elders, where they're learning that, that culture and tradition and values and the reasons why we do those things. So our bigger goal is, really spreading the rights of nature across, Turtle Island within our youth, and becoming a stronger front, because, as Indigenous people and exercising our sovereignty and our traditions is the way that we think that we can solve this problem, because we don't believe the people that created the problem is going to solve the problem. But, like I said, as far as it being the time for non-natives to listen, and because we're all facing the current problems, it's our biggest goal to get it spread and to be able to really fight the climate crisis and keep moving on to all of our other natural relatives, and starting with the herring, as it signifies so much, but keep it going as far as eelgrass, scallops, steamers, everything that is being affected within this climate crisis, and using our sovereignty to be able to protect our Mother Earth.
Thank you. And thank you for all they're doing.